Hi everybody, how are you doing? It's day 3. Can you believe it? Day 3 of our Epic Explorers Virtual Holiday Bible Club. How are you doing? I hope you've really enjoyed the first 2 days. I hope that you have done all the different things that we've been doing during our time together. And I hope as well that you've actually learned loads. Well, we've got another exciting day today. Today we're at Mysterious Mountains. So where have we been? We've been to Breathtaking Bay on Adventure Island. We've been to Discovery Dens. And now we're at Mysterious Mountains. Well, more about that as time goes on this morning. I hope you're sitting comfortably at home. If you are, you need to get up because it's now time. Yes, it's time for our warm-up. So there we go, Explorers Warm-Up. I hope you've been joining in all week with Explorers Warm-Up. I hope that you've been doing loads of the different exercises. So we're going to start. Make sure that you've got a good firm stance on the floor. Remember, if you're at home with others, make sure that you've got plenty of space between you, that you're not in danger of hurting each other or getting in the way. Make sure you've got that space. So you're ready to go. What do we normally start with? We've been starting with our arms, haven't we? So let's get those arms working. So first of all, bring your arm across your front of you and then just, can you remember which part of the body we're stretching when we do this one? It's not the arms, is it? It's the shoulders here and just that. That's brilliant. And then can you do it the other way as well? And then bring your hand up from the bottom and then again that shoulder. That's brilliant. Well done. Today we might want to put our arms out a little bit. We'll do this one. We've done this one, haven't we? Back there. And then back there, we can do them all a little bit quicker today, both there. So we do that again, that way, and then both together. Brilliant. Now, while our arms are out, you might want to see if we can have our arms out and swivel your whole body. Can you swivel your whole body? So keep your feet firmly on the ground and swivel around. That's it. You're using your hips here and just move them. You might even want to put your hands on your hips and do that. Now, I know that this one leader in particular is really disappointed that we're not getting all the usual dad dancing, but I felt for the Holiday Bible Club, it's probably a good idea just to tone down the dancing a little bit and do some exercises. So have you got those ones moved? Can you do sideways as well? You remember the side slides? Now, you might want to be careful. If you're like me, you've got your binoculars on. I hope you still got those from our first day. But if you've got your binoculars, just be careful as you're doing your side slides, that they don't hit anybody else or swing too much. Brilliant. Now we need to get moving. So just marching on the spot. And as you're marching, can you bring your knees up to your hands? See where my hands are? Can you get your knee right up to your hand? Can you do that as you're marching? That's good. That's a little bit of energy done there. I hope you're not getting too hot just yet. Now can you do it by just little jogs without your feet leaving the floor? You might want your heel to touch the floor and then come up in the air. And if you're really energetic, why don't you do some running on the spot and get your feet off the floor? I'm going to try not to get too hot this morning. You might want to use your arms as well. There we go. It's almost, imagine you've got some ski poles in your hands. Can you imagine that? And you're actually walking and marching and running down. Brilliant. Well done. Now, what have we done that I've forgotten to do so far? What's left? What about your star jumps? You remember? So hands together by the side of you and your feet together, and then you're going to put them both out at the same time and both in. Can you do 3 of those for me? 1, 2, 3. Well done. Can you do 5 of them in one go? Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well done. Do you feel warmed up now? Do you feel supple and flexible and ready to go? It's really important, isn't it, that we're not only physically well and fit, but it's also so that we can be mentally sharp and fit as well and focused. So I'm hoping that you're ready to go today. Now, as we move on to our next thing, what we've got is, well, it's a new bit today. You know, at the end of the morning, I do Explorers Challenge. Well, today, at the beginning, I'm going to do a slot called Explorers Challenge Pictures. So we're going to have some pictures. So I'm going to show you some of the things that some of your parents have already sent me. Now, can you remember on our first day, My challenge was, can you do your own map? And some of you, 2 of you, have sent in a map. So here's your first one. Now, I'm not going to say who's done them, but if it's yours, you should be able to recognize that. That's a brilliant map of Adventure Island, isn't it? I really worked really hard on that. It's fantastic. I was so pleased to receive that and see that one. And here's another one that I've received. There's a lot of work that's gone into that adventure map, hasn't there? So that's Adventure Island and a treasure map. So that is brilliant. But I've also had a parent that sent in 2 different, some of our crafts that we've done. You remember our intrepid inventions on our first day? It was binoculars and a compass. So here's the 2 that have been done by another family. Aren't they brilliant? And have you done them? And why don't you send me in your pictures too, so that I can share those with all of you tomorrow? Remembering it's our last day tomorrow, so if you're going to send them in, you need to send them in to me before tomorrow, so I can show you some more pictures tomorrow. So that's our Explorers Challenge pictures. Now we've got our brief. How much can you remember from this week? Do you remember, first of all, what we're thinking about is we're thinking about who we are. Now, it's pretty obvious, isn't it, who we are? Who are you? Are you an explorer? I'm certainly trying to be an explorer this week. I hope you have been too, exploring all the different things, particularly in the Bible. Where have we gone? Well, we've been going to Adventure Island, haven't we? And I've already said this morning where we've been so far. Can you remember? Where are the 2 places we've been so far? Yes, it's Breathtaking Bay on our first day, and it was Discovery Dens yesterday, and I've already told you where we're going today. Mysterious Mountains, and we're going to learn loads more today in terms of that as well. What are we doing? Well, I've told you each day that what we're doing is we're trying to find out who Jesus is and what he came to do. That's what we're looking for, isn't it? That's what we've been trying to find out. And on our first day, when we went to Breathtaking Bay, well done those of you who are saying that at home, we certainly learned that Jesus' words, and they're really powerful, and they're powerful because he's the Son of God. But we also learned that not only his words, but his actions are powerful too. And that's because we've learned that he is God's chosen king and son. Now, it's only a couple of days until Easter, and many of you know that I often use the phrase that Jesus is God's promised, chosen, special king. And we've been finding that out this week, haven't we? Do you remember yesterday we learned a little bit about sin, didn't we? And we did Joe with the wobbly legs. And as we learned that, we saw what sin is, that sin is missing God's mark. Can you remember? We thought a little bit about arrows. You imagine doing archery and firing those arrows and then missing the mark. So we did a little bit about how sin is disobeying God and missing his mark, his standard. And everybody does that. But we also found out that sin, well, it spoils. We saw that can you remember the other S? There was 3 S's. It spoils, it separates, that means breaks relationships, particularly with God. And what was the third one? We learned yesterday that we're stuck, that we can't solve the problem ourselves. Well, we're going to find out some more about that today, and I'm really excited about what we're going to do with that today. But we're now going to play a game again. Now, we did Map It Out, didn't we? First day, it was Who Am I? And we saw Dora the Explorer, Mr. Incredible, and Jessie the Cowgirl. Well, yesterday, we did a Map It Out, and it was parts of pictures. So on Monday, we found out a little bit about who Jesus is. Yesterday, we said about how a small part of the picture we need to see the bigger part of the picture. We need to find out more of the picture, and we started to do that yesterday. Today in Map It Out, I've got you to make some decisions. You need to make decisions. We're playing a game of swap or no swap. So I'm going to give you a picture, and you've got to decide at home, am I going to keep that picture and accept that one, or do I want to swap it for the next one? and you'll see whether you'll be able to work out whether your swap was a good swap or a bad swap. So here's your first one. So your first one, you've got an ordinary car. That's an ordinary car. It's quite a nice car. You can get a lot of you in it. Do you want to swap or no swap? Make a quick decision. Whatever you've decided, you can't change your mind when you see the next picture. But if you've decided to stay with that one, then that will be yours. If not, then if you've decided to swap, this is what you get. You ready? It's a sports car. That's a good swap. So those of you that did the swap, that was a good swap to make. Here comes your next one. So you ready? Now this is a ham salad sandwich. You've got some tomato and some ham and some lettuce. Do you want to keep it or swap it? Now I've got one of my helpers here that some of you will know him, the Reverend Mike Newman. He doesn't want to keep the ham salad sandwich. He wants to swap. What do you want to do at home? Do you want to swap? Okay, if you're sticking with that, you've got the ham salad sandwich. But if you've decided to swap, you get... And here it comes, it's a chicken salad. No, it's a cheese salad sandwich. Mike's very happy with that swap. Are you happy at home with your swap? Okay, here's your next one. This one's quite topical. It's one of my favorite sports, this. So you've got Ronaldo. Now he's a famous footballer, okay, so you've got to decide, do you want to keep him, or for your team, do you want to swap him? Mike doesn't want to keep him. Jan doesn't want to keep him either. Neither of them want to keep him. They're my helpers here. So who are we going to go for? If you're sticking, then you've got him in your team. If you're swapping, this is who you get. Here we go. It's Messi. So we've got thumbs up with my helpers here. Here's the next one. Oh, I love this one. You ready for this one? Do you want to keep some sprouts? I love sprouts. If only we could have Christmas Day and Christmas dinner every day, that would be fantastic. Do you want to keep your sprouts or do you want to swap them for something else? What do you want to do at home? If you've decided you want to swap, this is what you get. You get loads of sweets. That's not particularly helpful, is it? That's not going to be very healthy. Okay, here's another one. We've done some good ones so far. Here's this one. Do you want to keep a brick or do you want to swap a brick? What do you want to do? Now, what could possibly come next? So if you want to stick with your brick, it might be the start of a barbecue in the garden. It might be the start of a new house or a house extension, maybe. You could save it up for later. Those of you that want to swap, here it comes. This is what you're going to swap. If you've decided you want to swap, this is a really good swap. It's a gold bar. Who wants to keep a brick if you've got a choice of getting a gold bar? That's a really good one, isn't it? Okay, we've got one more. Here you go. Here's your last one. And what you've got is you've got a palace. Do you want to stick with the palace or do you want to swap it? What do you want to do? Stick or swap? Okay, so those of you that have decided to swap, this is what you get instead of the palace. You're going to get a rubbish dump. That's not so good, is it? Some of the swaps were similar, weren't they? So one sandwich or another sandwich, but they were generally the same. Some of the swaps were worse, definitely. That last one, from a palace to a dump, that's not a great swap, is it? Some were much better. A sprout to sweets, although your parents might think that's not a good swap. But definitely a brick for a gold bar was a very, very good swap, wasn't it? Today, we're going to hear about the greatest swap ever. We're going to hear about how Jesus swapped all our badness for all his goodness. How he took our punishment so that we don't have to. And it's the best swap ever in the world. Well, we're going to sing. You've sat really well, listening carefully, and I hope you've joined in at home. We're going to sing now, and we're going to sing one of the songs we sung yesterday. You remember it? Super Saviour. Now, many of you will know Super Saviour. Let me remind you of some of the actions. We've got who, that's for who can save the day? And who can take our sin away? So it's a fist by your heart and pull it away. Who can, and then we've got power. That's the power. So you can do that one at home. Then you've got super savior. You've got to make sure that you're doing a Superman stance. You can go one way, and then when you do the second line, you do it that way and change direction. And then we've got look, and point. Here comes Jesus, and then up, and you might even want to jump. But can you be really careful not to headbutt the light in the middle of the room? So be really careful. Try not to fall on each other and hurt anybody. But let's really enjoy this song. Remember, sing the words, do the actions, and go wild for Jesus, super savior.
Who can save the day, take our sins away? Who can rescue us with mighty power? Super Savior to the rescue, Super Savior mighty to save. Look, here comes Jesus, up, and out of the grave. Super Savior to the rescue, Super Savior, mighty to save. Look, here comes Jesus, up, and out of the grave. He's the death crusher, sin smasher. Who's the mighty super savior? Jesus. He's the death crusher, sin smasher. Who's the mighty super savior? Jesus! 1, 2, 3, out! Who can save the day, take our sins away? Who can rescue us with mighty power? Super Savior to the rescue, Super Savior mighty to save. Look, here comes Jesus, up, and out of the grave. Super Savior to the rescue, Super Savior mighty to save. Look, here comes Jesus, up, and out of the grave.
Did you enjoy that? I hope you did. I hope you used loads of energy. What brilliant words in that song. And I hope you've taken them all into your heads and maybe even towards your heart as well. How good would that be as we understand more about Jesus? Well, today's big question is, how are we rescued? So we've seen who Jesus is. We've seen what he can do in that he can say he can forgive sins. We saw that yesterday, didn't we? With Joe with the wobbly legs. Today we're going to be thinking about, how are we rescued? Now we're getting much closer to Easter weekend, aren't we? We're only 2 days away from Good Friday. And all the events of that first Easter 2,000 years ago. Now, today's a little bit different from our previous 2 days because I've got a special visitor in today as well. And he's going to tell us a little of the events that happened all those years ago, 2,000 years ago. Now, before we hear from him, though, from our visitor, let me share with you what has happened in Jerusalem before the time when our visitor is going to tell us about. Did you know that when we first pick up our story of that very first Easter, it was Passover time? Have you heard that before? Have you heard about the special time for the Jews, for the Israelites, about Passover? Perhaps you know, perhaps you've done that at school already. Perhaps you can remember some of the details about it. Do you know it's all about the Jewish people, God's chosen people in the Old Testament of the Bible, the big first section of the Bible with 39 different books in it. It's all about them remembering all that God did for them through a man called Moses, and I'm sure many of you know who Moses is, when God chose Moses to help his people to go free from being slaves in Egypt. They had been slaves for many years, 400 years they'd been slaves in Egypt. And God helped them through Moses to be free from the Egyptians. And that's what Passover is all about. It's celebrating how they were able to get out and be free from being slaves. And every year from that point in the Old Testament of the Bible, they had to remember during the feast of Passover the things that God had done for them in rescuing them so miraculously, so incredibly. And so to celebrate Passover, many people returned to Jerusalem. And Jesus and his disciples, they also went to Jerusalem. In fact, the Bible makes it really clear that Jesus going to Jerusalem, even though it was dangerous for him. Now, we've not talked a lot about why it was dangerous, but the religious leaders wanted to get rid of Jesus because of the things that he'd been saying and the things he'd been doing. And so although it was dangerous for him, he went to Jerusalem. And he went because it was a very important part of not only his plan, but God's rescue plan. And Jesus was totally obedient. Now, the first event that when Jesus rode into Jerusalem, this very first event, he went into Jerusalem on a donkey. He went in on a donkey. Now, that seems a strange thing to do, but it was just as the prophet Zechariah, you may have heard of him before, he wrote about these events happening. But what was amazing is he promised that God's promised chosen special king would ride into Jerusalem on a donkey. But when he wrote about it, it was more than 400 years before Jesus actually did it. How incredible is that? Can you imagine 400 years? It's a lot longer than I've lived. Now, some of you I know think I'm very old, but it's many, many more times than how old I am. It's a long time. Now, when he wrote about this 400 years before, it then happened when Jesus rode into Jerusalem. Wow, how amazing is that? Now, when Jesus arrived in Jerusalem, he then went to the temple in Jerusalem, which it's like it was the Jewish church. And he went there straight away to pray. It was something that Jesus did loads. But when he got there, he couldn't pray. And he couldn't pray because the people had made it like a marketplace. It was hustle and bustle and noise. There were even people cheating and stealing. It was an awful place, and it's not what it should have been. Jesus was quite right to be angry, and he turned over tables, and he shouted at them and said, God's house, the temple, was a house of prayer, but they'd made it into a den of robbers. It wasn't good. After this had happened, the religious leaders, now we saw some of them at the house in Capernaum, didn't we, yesterday? The religious leaders were very angry with Jesus, and they planned to get rid of him. So it was still a dangerous place for him. Even though things were not looking good for Jesus, if you read the Bible, you will clearly see that Jesus wasn't surprised. He was actually expecting some of these things. It was all part of God's rescue plan. Then on the Thursday evening, and that's tomorrow for us if you're watching this live, on the Thursday evening it was time to actually celebrate the Passover, this special Passover meal. And Jesus, his disciples and other followers met together at night time in an upper room in Jerusalem. And they celebrated the Passover. And Jesus, as their leader and teacher, took them through the meal. Now, as Jesus spoke the very, very familiar words of the Passover, he knew them better than anyone, he changed them. That was strange. Those who were there were really surprised. You could imagine hearing the disciples saying, "What? What's he saying? Jesus should know this. He's got the words wrong." Because he knew them better than anybody, but he changed them. They thought he'd got them wrong, but actually Jesus was changing the old Passover for something brand new. He said, "This is my body broken for you," as he took the bread and broke it. That's a bit strange. That's not the words. Then he said, and he took the cup of wine to remember the things from the Passover, that very first one with Moses, and he said, "This is my blood shed for you for the forgiveness of sins." Jesus, you got it wrong. That's not right. That's not what the words are. You see, the disciples didn't understand, but they would shortly. It would be terrible, but it would all make sense soon. Now, after the Passover meal, Jesus led his disciples to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. And Jesus went there and prayed, and he prayed for strength to do what God wanted him to do. After they had prayed, a company of soldiers from the temple came to arrest Jesus, and even one of his own followers, Judas, one of his 12 followers who had been with him for 3 years, betrayed Jesus with a kiss, which is normally a greeting of somebody who's a friend. It was so that he could show the guards which one they needed to arrest. Betrayed means to let down. He gave him up to the authorities, to the religious leaders. Now, a lot of events happened after that, and our special guest is going to tell us what happened next. So I'll let him introduce himself to you and tell you what he saw and observed.
I'm a soldier in charge of nearly 100 men, I'll have you know. And boy, I've seen a lot. The toughest place Caesar sent me was Jerusalem. Not an easy job, believe me. I mean, there was this one week which started off on a real high. Tons of people turned out on the streets to cheer on a guy called Jesus. He had been travelling around for a few years showing incredible power, forgiving people and teaching about God. It seemed everyone loved him, and yet, before the week was up, we were putting him to death on the Friday. Crazy. We were brought in after the Jewish leaders had arrested Jesus during the night. They didn't like the things Jesus was saying and doing, or the fact that he was so powerful and popular. And so they captured him and tried to find something they could punish him for. But do you know what? They couldn't, because he'd never done anything wrong. However, when Jesus said he was God's chosen king and son, the Jewish leaders decided he was lying and could be punished for that. And so they started to beat him and laugh at him. And then they dragged him to see Governor Pilate. As I stood guard, I listened to Pilate questioning Jesus. But Jesus just remained quiet. Then he and another prisoner, called Barabbas, were taken onto the balcony. By this time, there was quite a crowd gathered. They were all keen to see what would happen to Jesus. Pilate silenced them. Then he gave them a choice. They had to choose who they wanted to let go and who should be killed. In my mind, it was a stupid thing to ask. Why on earth would they want Jesus killed? He hadn't done anything wrong. Why should he die in place of Barabbas, who was a thief and murderer? But the crowd began to shout, "Free Barabbas! Kill Jesus! Free Barabbas! Kill Jesus!" They got angrier and angrier. And Jesus, he just stood there, saying nothing. It was if he knew what was going to happen. My boss Pilate ordered that Jesus be killed, and so we led him away and gave him a beating. When we were tired of whipping Jesus and mocking him, we tied a wooden beam to him. Then we led him to a hillside. There, we nailed Jesus to a wooden cross between two criminals and gambled for his clothes to see who could keep them. Now, I've seen many a man die on a cross, but never as Jesus did. He didn't scream or swear. Instead, he forgave those who were being cruel to him. It was incredible. From the things I had heard, Jesus must have had the power to stop it all, to save himself, but he didn't. He stayed put. He didn't deserve to die, but what could I do? It was my job to follow orders, and so I stood guard and I waited. I waited for him to die, and then the weirdest thing happened. It was daytime, but all of a sudden it went pitch black. Total darkness in the middle of the day, for 3 hours. None of it made sense, until Jesus cried out in a loud voice, "My God, why have you turned away from me?" God had turned away from his son. Jesus took our punishment for the wrong we have done, and in doing so, he was separated from his Father. It should be us who are cut off from God, because we don't treat him the way we should. But Jesus died in our place. He died so that we can be forgiven friends with God forever. As Jesus took one last deep breath, he said, "It is finished," and died. The ground shook, and a big thick curtain in the temple tore in half. It was then that I knew for certain that Jesus really was the Son of God. I wonder, who do you think Jesus is? Do you believe he's God's son? Do you understand why he had to die? After Jesus had died, Pilate checked with us that he was definitely dead. Then we gave his body to his friends, who wrapped him up and buried him in a tomb, a cave cut out of solid rock. A huge stone was pushed in front. Some of us soldiers were sent to guard the tomb. There was no way anyone could get in or out.
Wow. Maybe you know the story well, but maybe you've heard that this morning for the first time. As sad as the story seems at this point, it's really important to know that this is not the end of the story. Let me say that again. It's really important for us to know that this is not the end of the story. There is more to come, and we'll hear about that tomorrow. Jesus knew that he was going to die. It wasn't an accident. He wasn't surprised when the religious leaders arrested him. He wasn't surprised when they handed him over to the Romans to be killed. He knew when and why he was going to die. He knew that it was part of God's rescue plan to save us from being stuck with the punishment we deserve. Jesus didn't deserve to be punished, but he chose to die in our place. He chose not to rescue himself so that we could be rescued. Let me try and explain that a bit better, what happened because Jesus dying on the cross. I want you to imagine, and I've got it here, I want you to imagine that this is my phone. Imagine that this phone has recorded all the things that I've ever done wrong. I'm going to hold it really tight because I don't want anybody to see what's on it because it would be so bad. We talked about it this week, the sin that we have. All the sin that I have is recorded on this phone. And this is me here. So there I have it. There, my sin on me. And because of it, we know that it separates us. And if we imagine God up here, the sin on me separates me from God. All the things that I've disobeyed. Now imagine that this other hand is Jesus, who we know from all we read in the Bible is perfect. And he had amazing relationship with his Father in heaven, with God. Nothing separated him. He never did anything wrong, so there's nothing there in the way of his relationship with God. But there is for us. But when Jesus died, he took all my sin on that cross with him, like that. It was a swap. Jesus took all my sin, which meant that I'm now free to have a relationship with God. My sin is not in the way. All of God's anger at sin, because it's such a horrible thing, that disobedience of him, was poured onto Jesus, his son, instead of on me. And that's why Jesus cried out, God, why have you turned away from me? God turned away from Jesus for the first time, the only time ever, as Jesus took the punishment for my sin. It was the only way our sin and the problem of sin could be fixed. And that's why it was God's rescue plan. Now look at my other hand. There's no barrier now, is there? I'm no longer separated because Jesus has taken my sin. That's how Jesus' rescue for us works. The day Jesus died was a sad day because Jesus died a horrible death. But we call it, do you know what we call it on Friday? We call it Good Friday because it was also a happy day. And it's a happy day because through Jesus' death, he did something amazing and wonderful. When Jesus died, the huge curtain in the temple, you remember the Roman centurion mentioned that, the huge curtain in the temple ripped in two. It just tore down, and it was huge curtain, very heavy curtain. It just miraculously split in two. God was using it as a big signpost to show us that now our sin has been dealt with. We can be God's forgiven friends. You see, in the past, that big giant curtain was a huge no entry sign into a place where people could meet God. It separated people because of sin. But when Jesus died, God tore the curtain in half to show that he had accepted Jesus' payment, that he'd accepted Jesus' punishment for our sin. So it's a happy day. Now, instead of being punished, we can be forgiven. A bit like Joe with the wobbly legs yesterday. Instead of death, we can know life, and life in its fullness, to the full. Instead of being stuck as God's enemies, we can be God's friends, all because what Jesus has done. Now, some people in the crowd thought Jesus' death was a mistake. The religious leaders thought it was unnecessary, but the Roman soldier who was watching said that Jesus must be. He said he must be God's son. I wonder what you think of Jesus' death. The day that Jesus died was a sad day because Jesus, God's perfect son, took our punishment. It was a happy day because Jesus died so that all who believe and trust in him can be his forgiven friends forever. But it was also a planned day, planned by God, as he'd always known it was the only way to rescue us. Now, if you've been doing your notebook from a few days ago, do you remember I mentioned that earlier? You could make your own explorer's notebook. One of the things I said was on the first day you could put that Jesus is the Son of God. I didn't mention it yesterday, but yesterday you could write in your notebook that who is able to forgive sins. And today we can add another bit. We can say, and died in our place. And that would help you to keep your own notebook. And if it's on a big notebook, you can write lots of other information and things around it as well. Do you know Jesus dying in our place? Well, it's the greatest swap the world has ever known. And another planned day was going to follow on the Sunday, because Jesus had promised, he'd promised that he would come back to life on the third day. 3 times he had said to his followers, I will rise again. Now we'll think about that planned day tomorrow. Well, we're going to sing again. You've done brilliant this morning, and I hope that you've listened well and that you've taken on board all the things that we've done. Now, we're going to sing. We've got a new song today, but some of you will know it, and it's a brilliant story. This song is all about the Bible, and it tells us that all the Bible stories lead to Jesus. All the Bible stories lead to Jesus because he is the King, God's chosen King and Son. So enjoy this. You've got You can make a crown on your head if you want to do some actions whenever the word king is mentioned. You might want to point like that for all the Bible stories lead to him, and you might want to make some of your own actions up as well. The words will come up, and this is big Bible story. Enjoy this one.
2, 1, 2, 3. There's a big Bible story, God gets the glory. Gather up under Jesus the King. He is amazing, serving and saving. All the Bible stories lead to him. Hey-oh, hey-oh, hey. God gets the glory, Jesus the King. Go, hey-oh, hey-oh, hey. All the Bible stories lead to him. All the Bible stories lead to him. Yeah. There's a big Bible story, God gets the glory. Gather up under Jesus the King. He is amazing, serving and saving. All the Bible stories lead to him. Go, hey-oh, hey-oh, hey. God gets the glory, Jesus the King. Go, hey-oh, hey-oh, hey. All the Bible stories lead to him. Hey-oh, hey-oh, hey. God gets the glory, Jesus the King. Go, hey-oh, hey-oh, hey. All the Bible stories lead to him. All the Bible stories lead to him.
Morning everyone, I hope you're having fun today. I'm here again to do some craft with you, and it's a very simple one today. All you are actually going to need is one sheet of paper. That's all you actually need today. So with one sheet of paper we are going to make something puzzling, I think. What I'm going to show you is 4 different folds to make in your paper. You're just going to make 4 folds in your paper, and then we're going to do a little bit of ripping, and hopefully we will have something to show at the end. So each time I show you a fold, I'm going to give you something to remember about that fold. Okay, the paper I'm using, like I say, you can use any paper you want. A4 size is great, certainly those proportions where one side is longer than the other. That's what you need. I'm actually going to use a piece of paper that's a different colour on one side, and then hopefully it will help you to see where I'm doing the folds a bit more easily. Okay, so fold number 1. This is what we're going to do, fold number 1. You need your piece of paper, and you need to take the top corner and fold it so it goes down the opposite side like that, so that those sides meet and give you a point there. Okay, I'm just going to put it down on the desk, show you again. Fold it from the top down. When you've got it nice and neatly lined up, like we had to do yesterday, nice neat lining up, just with your finger squash it down, and hopefully it will look like that. That is fold number 1. Now with the number 1, you need to remember that there is just one person who's lived a perfect life in the whole history of time, and that one person is Jesus, and he is the only one who can save us from what Mark's been talking about, from those sins in our life, and actually help us to have that relationship with God. So there is just one man, and that one you need to remember is Jesus. Okay, so that's one fold. We've got it like that, and it's folded over. We're now going to go for number 2. Okay, number 2. So have it as you'd folded it like this, and then this point that's still the top of your paper now needs to go back over to that side. And you can see that, so it's come up from the top and it's gone back over to that side like that. Again, line it up neatly and squash it down. You should end up hopefully with something that looks a little bit like our house. Not our house that Joe with the wobbly legs went in, because this has got a pointed roof, isn't it? But we've got a house. Now then, with number 2, what you need to remember are 2 hands. Mark's been telling us today about how Jesus was killed. He was killed on a cross. We call it being crucified, don't we? And what happens when you are crucified? Your hands are nailed either side to the cross. So you need to think of Jesus' 2 hands being nailed to either side of the cross. But what you also need to think about is they didn't nail him on when it was upright. He was lying on the floor like this, and he was being held down so that they could nail him down. And what you need to think about is he couldn't move very much, but probably I think he could move his head. And I think he probably looked down his arm, and he looked at a nail going in here. Now, this is Jesus who we've been talking about all week. This is Jesus who is God. This is Jesus who was there when the world was created, and all that had to be said was, let there be light, and there was light. He could have said, let the nails go away. Zap these people who are nailing me to the cross from the face of the earth, God. And it could have happened. But he didn't. He looked at the nail and he thought, no, I'm going to let it happen. I'm going to choose to let it happen. This isn't a mistake that I'm here. I'm supposed to be here, and I'm going to let it happen. Now, if you don't quite believe me, he then looked the other way and said, no, really, I'm right. I am going to let it happen. I can choose not to, but I choose to. I'm going to let this happen. So that's what you need to think about with your second fold. So that's our 2 folds. So now we have got number 3. Okay? So we have got our house, and this bit's very easy. You just need to fold this bit here, this bit here up to the level here where it comes across. So imagine there's a line across there, and you're just going to fold that up like that, and again swidge it across. I wonder if you can think about what might be 3. Well, actually, that's how long that Jesus spent in the tomb, wasn't it? This horrible death, this crucifixion, it killed him. It was supposed to kill him, and it succeeded in killing him. And he was put in a tomb. They didn't bury people like we do in the ground, or cremate people like sometimes we do, but they put people in little caves with a huge stone rolled over. And that's where Jesus' body went. When he was dead, it went in the tomb, and he was there for 3 days. So that's our 3rd fold. Okay, so I'm sure you know what's coming up now. Fold number 4. Fold number 4. Okay, now you don't need to draw this. I'm just going to draw it on to show you. I've got my piece of paper like this, and I'm going to draw the line where I'm going to show you to fold, just to make it easier. Now then, I know if you are certainly in Key Stage 2 at school, you'll know a name for this line, and we'd call it the line of symmetry, wouldn't we? It's straight down the middle. I've drawn it on. You don't need to draw it. I've just drawn it so it's obvious to you where I'm going to fold. So now I'm going to do my 4th fold. And you should end up with a funny little thing. It's sort of an oblong with a little triangle on the top like that. And that is number 4. Okay, so I said 4. I wonder if you can think about what 4 might be. Was it 4 days in the tomb? Only 2 hands? What could 4 be? Well, you might see here in 4, when I've spelt it, I've put the U in red, because do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move that U. My U is now going to come from before the R to the after the R. And you need to remember with your 4th fold that it was for you. It was for me, it was for Jan, it was for Mark, it was for Mike. And for you, listening at home, watching at home, it was for you. For you. That's what our 4th fold is. Now then, we are left, aren't we, with this funny bit of paper, which isn't much at all, is it? I'm going to draw another line on it for you. Again, you don't need to draw the line, but I'm going to show you where we need this, our next little bit of work to be. Can't get the lid off my pen. There we go. So now I've drawn a line. Can you see it's where the triangle meets the rectangle, and I've just gone straight down. Okay, straight down. Now this bit can be a bit tricky. What we're going to do is we're going to rip down that red line. Okay, we're going to rip down that line. Like I say, you can just use an imaginary line, but we're going to rip down it. You might need some scissors to get you started off, but you might just about be okay in starting to rip it. Let me see if I'm strong enough this morning to do it. Oh, there we go. And I'm just going to rip down my line. There you go, ripping all the way down till I've got 2 pieces of paper. It's looking like a bit of a funny craft this morning, isn't it? We've got 2 pieces of paper, one that looks, I don't know, what does it look like? A train perhaps, and one that's just lots of bits of paper. Now then, this lots of bits of paper, if we wanted to, we could say that this was the sin that Mark was talking about, the things that are wrong in our life, that thing, that barrier that blocks us from God. That's what this could be. And do you know what we're going to do with it? We're just going to throw it away, because that is not us anymore. That is not us anymore. But this is what we're left with. So if you carefully open out it, careful, because it doesn't quite open in the way you might think, and you don't want to rip it as you open it. But as you open it, you are left with this empty cross. I'm not going to say much more about that because that's all tomorrow. But for now, there's your empty cross. That's your 4 things. Remember, 1, only Jesus. 2, those nails. 3 days dead in the tomb. And 4, it was for you. Okay, have a go at doing these. What you can do is look at the video later, look at it again on YouTube, so you get this perfect. I've started, every time I find a piece of paper, making crosses out of it. I can't stop myself now. Yours, probably, if you've just done it with a piece of white paper, will look like this. It's fine. You can put stickers on, you can decorate it yourself. I've made one out of wrapping paper. I like that one. I've made an incy-wincy tiny one. I like that one too. And then I've done some with different coloured papers. That had flowers on. This one, this is quite nice if you can get your sunburst to be in the middle of your cross. And then finally, this is one. Get this the right way up. I did this with a big piece of newspaper. You can make crosses all over the place. And I've got a little challenge. I know Mark has been giving you challenges, but my challenge is that you learn how to do this, and that sometime over the Easter weekend, you show a member of your family how good you are at folding paper and making a cross, but you tell them the story as you go along of what the 1 fold is for. Jesus, the two folds for the nails, 3 folds for the day in the tombs, and 4 folds that it was for you. Okay, so that's all for today. We'll do much more about this empty cross tomorrow, I think, but see you then. Bye.
It's back to me again. Did you enjoy that? That was brilliant. I was just watching with my binoculars so I could see all that Jan was doing and watch it really carefully. Can you remember 4 folds? 4 things to remember. Isn't it wonderful that our craft today is a cross that you can decorate and put up and remember the things that Jesus has done? It was a planned rescue, wasn't it? It wasn't by mistake. One person that can save us, that is perfect, that has never done anything wrong, that's Jesus. Do you know in the Bible, the word we use is he was righteous. He was right with God because he'd never done anything wrong. 2, do you remember? You can make the shape yourself. It was the cross and the fact that Jesus has died, chose to die for us. 3, how many days he was in the tomb. That was also a planned day, and we'll find out more about that tomorrow. And 4, perhaps one of the most important things, that he did it for you. He did it for me. I hope you remember that, and I hope you really enjoy it. Well, it's up on the screen, isn't it? Wise Words with Sheila. Now remember, we've been seeing and hearing from Sheila all week. The Bible is full of so many fantastic things to teach us that we not only have it in our heads, but that it might go into our hearts as well. And these are big words that end in... I can't hear you. You're going to have to be a little bit louder than that. They're big words that end in... Oh, I think I can vaguely, just in the distance, hear you shouting out, that end in shouldn't. Now, don't forget your English spelling health warning. The words that you see spelt on the screen it's a wrong spelling, so don't worry. And so far, we have learned 4 words. Now, I can remember them today, and some of you will be shouting that. It's probably because you've got it written down, Mark, and yes, I have. There are 4 words. We've got the word revelation. We've got the word substitution. I don't know how I forgot that one, because I love football, and substitution happens all the time. The 3rd word It's just particularly to do with today, isn't it? Salvation. And 4, that was a difficult word, propitiation. Can you say that? You've got to put your teeth back in to say propitiation. But can you remember what they mean? Have you told your parents at home what the 4 words mean? Revelation, God showing himself to us, revealing himself to us. 2, substitution, Jesus taking our place. We've learned that a lot today. 3, salvation, sinners saved from hell. That means we're saved, we're rescued. That's what salvation, being saved. And 4, now that's the more, in fact, it's probably that your parents haven't even heard that word before. Propitiation, and it means God's anger turned away. That meant that Jesus dying on the cross, God forgives us. He turns his anger away from us because of what Jesus has done. Well, I hope you really enjoy Sheila. So let me hand over to her for the 2 new words today.
G'day, kids. How you going, mate? Welcome back to Wise Words with Sheila, my daily explorer's slot to share some wisdom from the Bible with you. It's day 3. We've now got loads of those big words ending in shin. Can you remember them so far? It's not just about remembering the words, but also remembering what they mean. Remember too that these words are fair dinkum, genuine and true. So far we've learnt revelation and substitution on day 1, and salvation and propitiation on day 2. But what do they mean? Maybe you can chat with whoever is with you at home. Choose one of the words and tell them what it means. I'll give you a minute to do that now. How did we get on with that? I hope you remembered at least one of the words. Today we have 2 new big words ending in shin. The first one is justification, and it means just like we'd never sinned. Our final new big word for today is imputation. I bet you've never heard that one before. It means Jesus' righteousness or high rightness with God is mine. So we have 6 big words now. See if you can remember all of them. I think this holiday Bible club is a real beaut. I'll be seeing ya.
Big words that end in shun. Show us what the Lord has done. Through Jesus, his own Son. Big words that end in shun. Revelation, God shows himself to us. Substitution, Jesus takes our place. Salvation, sinners saved from hell. Big words that end in shun. Big words that end in shun. Show us what the Lord has done. Through Jesus, his own Son. Big words that end in shun. Propitiation, God's anger turned away. Justification, just like we'd never sinned. Imputation, Jesus' righteousness is mine. Big words that end in shun. now. Big words and ending shine. Show us what the Lord has done. Through Jesus, his own Son. Big words that end in shine. Words that show us what the Lord has done. Listen to the big words, big words. Words that show us what the Lord has done. Listen to the big words, big words. Resurrection, raised from death to life. Redemption, sinners bought by God. Adoption, sinners made God's sons. Big words that end in shine. Big words that end in shine. Show us what the Lord has done. Through Jesus, his own Son. Big words that end in shine. Big words, come on now. Big words that end in shine.
Wow, I love that. I was watching them from a distance to make sure I could see Jew's puppets singing that song to us. Are you beginning to learn those words? We've done fantastic, haven't we? Right, well, we're now on to the Explorers Challenge. I hope you've enjoyed everything that we've done this morning. So, your first challenge, well, it's the same as we've had throughout the week. You've got to do your books. So overnight, if you can go to section 3 of your scratch pad and your logbook, and you can complete everything on that. Have you managed to do them all so far? I hope you have. So you've got Mysterious Mountains, section 3 in your scratch pad or your logbook. Second, your second challenge, well, that was yesterday, wasn't it? We did the family trail. Now, there's your picture. Now, 2 of you as families have already had a go at that yesterday, which is brilliant, absolutely fantastic. Now, my apologies, because when I first set the trail up, I did my posters that are in the 11 locations, but I changed the numbers on the map. I'm really sorry. So what I've done is I've sent you another email today with the new map, but a very, very special well done to the 2 families that still managed to do it. All the answers are the same, but actually the numbers on the map and the numbers on the posters didn't agree yesterday. But they're put right now. I've done it. I've worked hard overnight. They're now right. So if you want to do the treasure trail for Easter around Cheadle, it's there and ready for you. Now, there is one more challenge that I'd like to do for you, and there's the posters as well, so you can see those. And the final challenge, well, your final challenge is, why don't you have a go at writing a message, an important message, but doing it in code form, a bit like you will find as you go round the locations in Cheadle. I've done a code. So why don't you write a message, make a code for it, and share it with others? That would be a really good thing to do. Well, when you've done that, don't forget that you can email me with your pictures or any of the things that you'd like me to show tomorrow. It is our last day tomorrow. Now, we're going to a special place tomorrow, and we might even be including a little bit of a 5th place on our Adventure Island map. So, there's lots for you to do. I'm looking forward to our last day tomorrow. I will see you tomorrow. Have lots of fun today. So don't forget, stay safe, take care, and God bless.